Hey guys, GHAZZY TV here with another Path of Exile video guide, build guide. In this one, we're going to talk about the pure Spectre summoners. In this video, we're going to be talking about the best Spectre choices, or Spectre's choice, in the entire game, as the Syndicate Operatives have reclaimed their throne with a recent patch fix to them, making them cast their daggers attack with their daggers, rather than going into melee attack, doing no damage whatsoever. They have vastly superior single target damage compared to the previous kings, which were the Primal Crush Claw Crabs. They have vastly superior clear speed compared to the RSAA Ice and Fire combo, making these Spectres the absolute #1 choice, which is pretty sad because that means that we don't have any other diversity or variety within Spectre choices. In this video, I'll be talking about a low-budget approach, which will be the main focus of my forum written version, which you'll see a link to in the descriptions below. I will also be going through the medium budget. Basically, when you start investing it into the build, you can actually turn that into a high-budget version with a life-based approach. And I'll also be talking about two different min-maxed high-end versions in terms of energy shield, which is very, very expensive, and currently what I'm crafting items for and playing in this on the stream at the moment. So, where to start? The Syndicate Operatives are found in the Betrayal Encounters, which can happen sometimes when you're doing maps, or in the safe houses. These monsters are disappearing, well, their corpses disappears about 2 or 3 seconds after you've killed them, so you have to be very fast at summoning them. Or if you want to be lazy, just whisper GHAZZY TV in-game, you can summon them in my hideout, or you can just go to the global channel 6666, and a big shout out to the boys over there, because we're helping each other out in the community in both answering questions with summoners and also sharing Spectres. So make sure you tune into that global channel in-game, that's /global 6666. I'm going to start off by showing you the low budget approach. Tree-wise, it's very simple, it's the one I've used in the past. I did decide to include one very cheap cluster jewel, which has 12 passes. Just make sure the item level is proper, which shouldn't be a problem when it comes to this, because we're just going to alteration craft or scour alkits or just reinforce with harvest crafts till you get yourself a renewal. And then you're going to pick up renewal and use the small cluster jewels to get yourself surging vitality, which costs like 5 or 10 chaos each on the market, so it's very cheap. And you don't need this as all self-found. You can just, whenever you find it, then you can sort it, but before that you can just skip the entire cluster jewel. So this is basically the only thing that you need to purchase per se. The tree is very straightforward. You spec into HP, Lord of the Dead, more HP, and HP, and Element of Equilibrium. You also make sure you get Necromantic Aegis, with the cheaper version being the Victorious Charity. This is the low budget approach, and the higher budget will use a Woked +2/+2 shield, which I'll cover in a bit. The left-hand side minion damage nodes, Righteous Army and Redemption, are the big ones. However, you don't need Spiritual Aid if your accuracy is 100, and the best way to check this is to go to Calculations, bring your Spectres up, click the Show Minion Stats, look at their accuracy. If I were in this budget version to take away these two nodes, and I look at my calculations, my accuracy of these Spectres goes down to 99%. This is not acceptable. So if you're not at 100%, make sure you spec into the Spiritual Aid nodes to make sure the accuracy is at 100%. With whatever attack they have, because it's similar on all of them. So this is what you want to make sure to keep at 100% to make sure you don't lose any big damage numbers. Obviously, there will be POBs for all of these versions linked in the descriptions below as well. So that's enough for the tree. I did actually, just a quick note on the tree. I didn't take Avatar Fire. You can if you want to be lazy, like I usually am. The reason we don't do it is, and the reason we do it is to make sure that our Frost Bomb in the trigger one does not trigger Cold Element of Equilibrium, which is then overwritten by the Stormbrand again. It's nice to have, but it's not really needed. It's more if you're lazy or not. The items for this low budget approach is basically a +1 wand, which is either plus the minion skills or spell skills, with a trigger craft. Victorious Charity, simple energy, well, not energy shield, but life and resistances if needed. Helmet, a body armor with some life, but also +1 to maximum number of Spectres, which is why we don't go low life with it. Tri-grip, 4 green sockets to convert all the damage into cold. Bones of Ulur, or just a rare pair of boots with an Elder modifier called +1 to the level of raised Spectre gems, which can be a little bit more expensive with some movement speed. Bones of Ulur is the cheapest version you can get for this. Amulet, just HP and resistances. Rings, HP, resistances. Belt for the low budget would be a Darkness Enthroned. Smack in 2 jewels with HP and minion damage when you've used a minion skill recently. These are the 2 most important modifiers for these jewels. Flask-wise, you can go for a Seething Divine, Life of Staunching to get rid of bleeding, and just some extra utility flasks such as a Quartz, Basalt, Quicksilver, Granite, whichever floats your boat. If you want to go with a block route and not use Flesh Offering like I prefer, you can actually also smack in a Roomish Concoction and then spec into a Glancing Blows for 3 points to get yourself block capped, even if you're giving your shield to your minions. Besides that, when you can afford it, you can get Unending Hunger. This helps your clear speed quite a lot, but it's just a quality of life clear speed increaser. It doesn't increase your single target damage. Links are very straightforward. The trigger weapon, you want to use a Desecrate and Flesh Offering or Bone Offering if you prefer that with the Frost Bomb. What's very important with this setup is the order of the links. In game, for example, I have my Frost Bomb top and I have the Desecrate and then the Offering. Make sure that the Offering is below the Desecrate because they will trigger in order of links. So otherwise you might cast your Offering on no corpses and then spawn corpses. What you want to do is spawn corpses and then trigger the Offering. So make sure the Desecrate is placed above the Offering. It's just a small little detail, not super important. The other 3 link is a Stormbrand Hex Touch Frostbite. In this build we're not using double curses, but we're using 1 curse. So we have a Stormbrand for Elemental Equilibrium, Hex Touch and Frostbite. This is also the main ability that will trigger the 1 skills. In the 4 green setup for the Triad Grips, we're using Dash, Second Wind. These 2 needs to be linked, the other ones doesn't really matter. Precision, level 1. You can bring it up higher in the other versions, but if you can squeeze it up, do so. Just make sure that you might have to balance the Dash and Second Wind based off how much dexterity you have available in your gear, and as well as how much mana you have. Same thing with the Face Run. Then we have a utility minion setup, which is Feeding Frenzy linked with your Carrion Golem. And I'd like to separate those 2. You can take a 4-link item and you can use fusings on it to break it off. You can have 2-link, 2-link. And then I want to have Meixsell together with my Animate Guardian. In this POB, the Animate Guardian is not even activated. I'll leave a link in the descriptions below to the Animate Guardian video. The RS is very simple. Generosity with Hatred, Bone Chill for the Skitterbots. You can have 2-link, 2-link here as well. Doesn't really matter. And then smack in a Convocation and an Unset Ring, unless you just want to get rid of the Meixsell or something from here to put the Convocation in there if you're not running the Enemy Guardian, for example. So that's basically the setup. I actually did forget to talk about the Spectres. My bad. Going back. Spectre links. The main support links for the Spectres in your body armor, Tabula Rasa or +1 Spectre chest later, will be Ray Spectre, Minion Damage, Predator, Vicious Projectile, Hypothermia, GMP. Now that for the sake of clearing, I've experienced a much smoother clearing experience by changing the Predator support gem for Feeding Frenzy for the sake of that. So that will be the link setup you use. All of these links will be, and the form guide will be linked in the descriptions below. Very straightforward, clears everything. This build has been confirmed in an inferior setup to kill A8 series without problems. However, when you start looking into Delirium maps, the super hard invitation fights, it can be a bit rough unless you start investing to the character. So I'm just going to leave this one. I'm just going to jump into the medium budget. The medium budget version is very similar to the low budget. I'm staying alive with this. However, we are now instead using a proper minion helmet. This is where you start investing, and the order of upgrades you should go for would be the helmet, then the chest, then the belt, and then the wand or boots, depending on how you want to play it. So the helmet, I'm going to leave a link in the description as well for this one of how you craft this. It costs between 8 and 12x by average to craft. It's not very expensive compared to previous leagues. We can get this fairly easily, but it's still going to be somewhat of an investment. I wouldn't recommend trying to craft it unless you have about 15x. The links in the Spectre when you have it like this is very simple. You will put Spectre, Predator, Vicious Projectile, and GMP, and again switch Feeding Frenzy for Predator for clearing versus single target, and that made it quite a smooth transition. Same trigger, same Hex Touch approach, same things in the Triad Grip. And since we moved our minions, our Spectres from the chest into the helmet, we're going to put our utility minions in our chest, which we do not want 6-linked. The auras are the same, Convocation is the same, and the 3-link setup you're going to put in your chest piece like I have here. It's very simple. All you do is put Feeding Frenzy, Carrying Golem, Minion Life. And the other 3 would be Guardian, Meixsell, and Minion Life. The reason we don't link them together is because we want the Animate Guardian to be as safe as we can, so we don't rip his gear. And we want the Carrying Golem to provide the Feeding Frenzy buff, whilst the Spectres are doing Predator for single targets. The tree is slightly changed. I've kept the low budget approach with the Cluster Jewel. Obviously, there's a lot of room for upgrades in this version. Instead, I took away some of the life notes, and I smacked in a Glorious Vanity Jewel of Sibaka. This gives you Divine Flesh. Divine Flesh makes 50% of all elemental damage you take taken as chaos damage instead, and it increases your maximum chaos resistance. And all damage taken will bypass energy shield. So now you've lost the efficiency of energy shield, and you are now forced to make sure that you get the cap of chaos res. That means not 75% because we get 5+, that means 80% chaos resistance. This effectively means that all elemental damage that you take will be mitigated by 80%, or so 50% of the elemental damage you take will be mitigated by 80%, which is a very good EHP booster and a good defensive layer. Obviously, again, check the accuracy when it comes to Spiritual Aid, but other than that, that's basically what I've decided to do with the medium-budget version. There's plenty of room for upgrades in this build. There's a +2 one, for example, you can go for, a proper rolled shield rather than a Vix Charity, proper rolled helmet, Triad Grip. Instead of the Darkness and Throne, we're going with the Torrent Reclamation, which is absolutely massive for Spectre builds. And that's basically the big differences with the low budget to medium budget when you're sticking to the light-based version. When it comes to the higher budget version, there's two different styles. I'm not going to talk too much about the triple cluster or even quad cluster setup, because these are min-maxed builds. I will, however, say that based on experience, I felt that the current version that I'm playing, which is 2 cluster dual setup, I did have some struggles with the 100% delirium maps, which can be solved by better investment and more damage to actually clear them off faster, which is one of the solutions you can do. The other is bumping up your EHP and defensive layers, which I don't think is the right way to do personally. But I think that this is the best way to do it with a triple cluster setup for the 100% delirium, but it's very similar to what we do with a double cluster setup, which is a more reliable way to play it. So I'm going to show you that right now. The setups are exactly the same as before. The Spectre setup is the same as well. The only difference is we are now speccing into Whispers of Doom, because we're actually in that side of the tree to get CI. This gives us an additional curse. This allows us to go for an Assassin's Mark or Sniper's Mark. I prefer Assassins. There's very little difference between the two on the ring. The weapon should be proper +2. I do actually have a better than this, because I'm using this weapon right now, which is the minion damage, or Alva double damage, to give us a lot more damage from that as well. And also tier 1 attack speed. So this is all about min-maxing at this point. Proper rolled shield. Obviously, I'm not done with the shield yet, so this can be a lot better. The helmet can be a lot better, because this is still the lower end of the high-budget helmets. I can get better energy shield and offering on the chest piece, but this is all for min-maxing approaches. +2 level of Spectre gems from the boots with high energy shield. We're talking about absolute min-maxing. The amulet for a build like this would require to woke orb a plus level of intelligence gem, as well as a reduced mana reservation from hatred, which allows us to go higher level on the precision. Or if you really push this hard, you can actually squeeze in an Avian's flight or Avian's might, the aspect of the Avian, to give yourself even better efficiency all around the table. And obviously, we're going to smack in a Bottled Faith since we're scaling crit with this. We have an energy from within since we're focusing on energy shield, and this is how the tree looks. I'm not going to talk too much in depth about these things. However, what I will mention is that in the forum written guide I have linked in the description, I will actually include guides or sections in the guide where I will explain how to craft all the big items for the higher budget build versions in a proper full written version, so you can actually go in and read those things of how you can very easily and cheaply craft the endgame items for a mid-max version if you so wish to do so. Because crafting jewels like this, when it comes to the large clusters with the Renewal, Vicious Bite, and Rotten Claws, is very, very cheap, but it costs a lot of currency to purchase, so you might want to craft them instead. So I'll go through all the details of this in the written guide, which I will update, well, tonight after tonight's stream. That's basically all I have for you. We did some other tests regarding the Spectres in their efficiency versus single target. The question has been how they shotgun. So we did some tests versus A8 series with GMP and without GMP. And it turns out that they should do a triple hits per attack without GMP. And if they are shotgunning, which we assume they do, they would do up to 15 or 18 hits per cast with GMP. Now, the problem with this was that never actually happened. We never had that difference, but we had a major difference with GMP being in there, which results in lower DPS output. And this is better than volley because the spread of the projectiles is actually a little bit less fanned out with the GMP compared to greater volley or volley. Well, greater volley has a lower reduced damage application, which would be in generally better. But GMP is better because of the fact that you can actually guarantee more projectiles hitting the target, which results in more damage. It's pretty hard to determine how many projectiles are actually hitting, so we are assuming, based on an educated guess, that with GMP they're actually reliably hitting 3 times per cast, and without GMP they're not hitting all 3 projectiles per cast, which is kind of weird, but that seems to be the case of it. So we actually did more single target damage with GMP, so keep that in, and that's my take on it. Right, that's all I have for you today. With the video-wise, make sure you like the video, subscribe for more content, comment down below, because we're gonna need all the help we can to pray to the algorithm gods, and check out the forum written guide in a couple of hours after the stream. Until next time, boys, stay safe and keep fucking rocking.